Awesome to welcome Purdue University Fort Wayne head coach Jon Coffman to the Basketball Podcast. As he embarks on his 11th season as head coach, he holds the distinction of being the program's winningest coach in Division I history with a remarkable 179-142 record. Coffman's coaching prowess doesn't go unnoticed. He's garnered numerous accolades, including the Horizon League Coach of the Year in 2022, adding to his 2015-16 Summit League Coach of the Year award. His strategic guidance led Purdue Fort Wayne to capture the Horizon League title in 2022 and the Summit League regular season title in 2015-16. The team has also made a habit of postseason appearances, highlighted by a runner-up finish in the collegeinsider.com tournament in 2023. Beyond wins on the court, Coffman fosters a culture of player development. An impressive 24 players under his tutelage have gone on to professional careers, including NBA standout Jon Coffman. His commitment extends to recognizing his players' achievements with a staggering 40 All-Conference honor awards in the last 14 years. Coffman's dominance extends beyond Purdue Fort Wayne. He holds the title of winningest mid-major coach in Indiana over the past 11 seasons. But look at you, 11 years later.
How about that? 14 years in Fort Wayne.
3 as an assistant, right? First, yeah.
Yeah, I was an assistant for 3 years. And
Who was that with again?
so I was with Tony Jasic. So when Dane left to take the Michigan State job, Tony was his top assistant. And I had just been, our staff been let go at Colgate. So I was without a job. And crazy story too with that and my wife was coaching at Hamilton College. She's the head softball coach there. And I create a yellow pad of everybody I know in college basketball, and I'm just chasing. And I get a call from Chris Holtman who says, "Hey, I think I might be able to help." And he says, "I know Tony just got the job at IPFW, and I don't know if other than going to a Final Four at Indianapolis, I'd ever stepped foot in the state." And I didn't know Tony at all.
Mm.
I'm like, "Yeah, that's not going to happen." And he goes, "No, I know him pretty well." And I can't remember where. So I'd known Chris from his days at Gardner Webb when I was at Stetson. We were in the same league. And I think he was at University of Ohio with Gross at that point. And he connects me, and man, it was awesome. Just lucky. 3 years after being let go on a coaching staff, I'm a Division I head coach, one of 362. It's crazy.
And how rare when you don't actually know the person to get hired, I'm
Never
sure.
happened. Never happens. And I took the call. I was in the Thayer Hotel on campus at Army, and Zach was trying to help me stay in the business. And it was great. It was like a $25,000 job. And my son was two. My wife was pregnant with my daughter, Lucy, at the
Wow.
time. To live in West Point. And he showed us campus and showed us where you get your groceries, all that stuff. And my wife goes, "So Zach, what does that have to do with us?" Yeah, you live off campus, you got to do this, and you're standing of living like it was going to be hard to ever make it. You
Yeah.
know, trying to figure that out. I interviewed at Covington Catholic on the way to my IPFW interview for a high school job, which would have been cool. Man, I always
Yeah.
envisioned being a high school coach anyway, because my great high school experience, like I thought that was my direction. So it was cool, but it was wild. But anyway, here you are,
So
man.
cool. Well, Jon, welcome to the podcast officially.
Yeah, all right.
And our relationship extends back to my time at Windsor. And I've followed your program really ever since. And yeah, let's just first start with sustaining success, because at a place where you are right now, it's not always the easiest thing to do, to be consistent and sustain success. And you've done it.
It's wild because people connect with me a ton about, hey, you had the success, the next job, and everybody talks about the next job. Two things that are a little bit amazing to me is that a lot of times the next job comes when you make that tournament, you make some miraculous run, but it's you have a great player and it happens. And I don't think there's enough attention given to those guys that just are really consistent. A great example from our league this last year is Coach Campy. He's been there 40 years, 40 plus years, and he's always competitive, always consistent to do what he's done. And I've reached out to him as a peer, and I've only been here 14 years, 11 as a head coach. And this off season, well, not this, the year before, I reached out to him. I said, "Hey, what are some of your challenges? Like, how do you manage those relationships on your campus? Because there's a time when people just get tired of you, or hey, those relationships, like you have enough issues as you go through, you're always going to have something that comes up. And how do you manage those relationships over time? Because as a college basketball coach, you're really intense and you got to operate on a college campus, which doesn't always work on the same time frame that people of high achievers in college athletics that you need it now, and you're operating on a college campus where we prefer to just study it for 6 months before we make that decision. And I laugh about that, but it is, and you're trying to
Oh
manage
my
these
God.
relationships over time.
Too many reflections. Just you saying that on my experience as a small college coach as well. Just and you know what and I was actually talking to a college coach yesterday about this exact thing and just going like on campus, it's our competitive intensity that's driving us, and they don't share the same, even though they're happy or successful and all that, but they're not invested in the same way. And especially as you said, when you've been there for so long, and how many times you have to solve the same problem in a little bit different way, but really it's the same problem, and you have to do it like it's brand new every time.
Nope, it's Groundhog's Day. And then you got to go back and there's a new person, a new role, and they want to do something new. And then that's cool. That adds new challenges with that. And that's something that I think that's my area of growth too. As I continue in year 11, working on year 12, but year 14, you're working on year 15. That's what I got to grow in, is that how do I manage the new people in the new positions, and how do I continue to have those strong relationships? Because I wouldn't be where I am without those strong relationships on my campus. And as I reflect back, one of the key reasons that we've had sustained success is I have a phenomenal athletic director, and she doesn't always agree with me, and that's good. That's a good thing, and can call you out on some of that space. But she also has given me space to grow, and when I have some creative ideas that she lets me grow in that space too, but then also identifies, hey, these might be some obstacles that you might face, and helps me through those obstacles, and then says, hey, maybe now's not the right time for some of that stuff. And we're really seeing that now with the changes in college athletics and the transformation. And I'd love to get into that because I think we have a really interesting perspective on NIL and the growth there. But let me
Well, I know
back
we've
up.
had to delay the podcast a few times because of your NIL fundraising. Now,
I know
now
it's and
let's
it's
bring it.
awesome what we've
Was
done.
your yeah, was your has your athletic director been with you the whole time, or have you had to transition?
She has,
Which is
and
unique too, right?
which is unique. And she was the interim my last year as an assistant, and then
Hmm.
became the head coach that year that we trained. So I've had two athletic directors during my time, but she was the athletic director that hired me. And she had been a really successful volleyball coach here
Hmm.
on campus. And then when our athletic director left, our chancellor at the time twisted her arm and asked, please, we need you to be the athletic director. So she was doing both jobs for a year. And then it's great having her perspective as a college coach.
How
Um,
much does it help having an athletic director who's competed at the highest level? I had three different athletic directors in my time in coaching, and I tell you, the best one was the one that competed at a really high level.
yes, absolutely. And has had to manage relationships, had to manage parents, has had to have those tough conversations with a student athlete that had not operated like you would like to. And
I
so,
could be wrong, but also they're okay to say what needs to be said. And
yes.
that's our whole thing, right? You and I, we don't want to waste time. Don't sugarcoat it. If it's a yes, great. If it's a no, and if it's let's explore it more, let's explore it more. But let's not drag it on, as you said.
No, it's been key. And the thing I think that the phrase or the thing that's really helped me have that sustained consistency here and success is that when I got the job, and I think before I went online and we went live with this, I was sharing with you that I got the head job. 3 years before I got the head job here, my coaching staff had been Holgate. And
I
so
can post the preamble if you want, so we don't have to. I'll
oh,
just
hey,
post.
that's good. There
Yeah,
was nothing I said that was
it's
inappropriate.
cool.
Uh,
No, it's cool to hear that kind of story. So coaches will hear that, and then yeah, now you are maybe here. Let's. What did Campy say? What was his advice about being on a campus for a long time?
he said a little bit of the Groundhog's Day, but he said the relationships are key. And something that his athletic director did is that they do, I can't remember if it's weekly or twice a month or whatnot, but they get on a Zoom. So no matter where they are, they have all the people that touch the program on that Zoom, and they just confront any issues that are there and talk about different things. And I think that is so key. And this is a John Gordon piece, but it's if there's a void in communication, that void gets filled up with negative thoughts. And so you need to confront it and talk about it. And now people know your perspective, and that's the best way to deal with it. And so that was his advice. He also shared with me, he knows everybody's birthdays, and he's trying to have those connections with people and those personal relationships and talks, which becomes a challenge. You have a lot of people working from distance now. And in our world, we're getting pulled so many different directions. And we always used to. And for my role, we impacted Fort Wayne by starting to raise money. And as the lowest budget in the Summit League, we grew in that space with our fundraising. But then you run into NIL and it's even more. And a lot of those are access. We've raised money because of access to a Division I head coach in your community. That's a reason. Hey, who's got Matt Painter's number? A few guys raise their hand. Who's got Mike Woodson's? A few guys raise their hand. Who's got Jon Coffman's? A few guys raise their hand, but a few more. And then I give it to everybody. Like we did at our fundraiser last November, our casino night. We had 500 people in attendance. And the first time we ran this fundraiser, it was like 50 people. My athletic director and her husband bought every auction item. So we made $15,000 and my athletic director donated $15,000. That was a fundraiser. And we made some friends out of it. It was great. Now we're raising 6 digits. We had 500 people there. It's fan raising, friend raising. Well, I sit there and I ask that question. I said, hey, who as a Division I, like you have access in Fort Wayne to the Division I head coach. And if you want to have your grandson sit on our bench, or hey, you want to have one of my players come talk to your youth organization, or hey, you want tickets to this sporting event, utilize me, utilize Fort Wayne's head coach. And I said, everybody pull out your phones. And I said, who's ever played text roulette? Nobody raised their hand. And I said, I have them all type in my cell number. And I said, now don't press send yet. All right, because these are the rules to the game. The 50th text is going to get this John Conchar game-worn jersey in the Indiana win back when we beat them when they were ranked number 3 in the country. And you're going to get this jersey, but here's what you're going to get. You're going to get access to me, okay? Access to a Division I head coach in the city. All right. Second off, I'm going to ask you for something. All right. I'm going to ask you for a recommendation of a youth program or somebody in the city that you think I can impact, I can at least invite to a game. We're going to get them here. We're going to help raise our fan base that way, or help some young person, all right, with our team. And then third, you're going to learn what's really important is interdependence of our program, our university. We need you all to be great. And you all really need our university to be great. Like you see all these cranes downtown as our city grows. You need Purdue Fort Wayne to be really strong and successful in order to continue to maintain the manpower for people in the city to keep with these jobs as this grows. And so I want to teach you interdependence is that nobody's going to win this jersey if we don't have 49 people text me to be the 50th person that texts me this. So I send this out, and this is 2 days before we open up season. And I promise them all I'm going to text them back. Of those 500 people, I had 398 texts that night.
That's amazing.
And it was cool. And all these people with these ideas and these texts. And so I'm responding to them, I'm pushing them forward. And it really helped, like with these community service groups that came in to come free to games and do this. Our camp went this summer from 120 to 277. I think that was impactful because all these youth organizations come into our games, and then we just connected. Like you got to get connected. And I've been here 13 years at that point, but 10 years as a head coach. And it's still, there's so many people you haven't met. And then that thrust us into this world of NIL, how we're going to figure out this new transformation of college athletics and the connections and sharing this unique message where you have a lot of people scratching their heads saying, I don't want to pay players. I don't make sense to me. This is not how we used to do it. And I have a way that I think is a great way for mid-majors, low majors, Division IIs, Division IIIs to attack this world, because I do think it's great. Let's make these young people, to pay them so that, hey, their parents they can afford to pay for their parents to come fly into town if they can and pay for a hotel, but then also connecting them with people in our community. Here's what's crazy. So 3 years ago, our players could not utilize my network or our university's network, or our program's network, or a fan base or a donor, and go sit down with them for lunch and talk about their life after basketball, what they want to do, buy lunch.
Really? No, there's some crazy rules. I don't know them all, but that's a crazy rule.
No, but it also made, I'm going to defend the NCAA, separate donors and baskets because you're worried about the $500 handshake, which was illegal at the time, or the brown bag that was going to get you to, yeah, which does, but that was the rules. And so we were trying to create rules to separate that. But That's not what education is about. Like, it's about networking. It helps you to get educated and learn knowledge, right? But so much of it is, how do you get the degree that now you're attaching to that brand, that country club, whatever it is, that's going to now help you get connected for that next job. And what we sell in our program is our network, our city. I'm going to help you skip the first job to get the second job. Get the job where you're receiving the coffee in the meeting, not serving the coffee in the meeting. And now we're able to do that through our network of people in the city. And this is where immediately, like, we didn't have NIL money at that stage 3 years ago, but immediately we changed the rules. And now I had 15 community mentors that each were challenged that once a month they would take one of our players out to breakfast, lunch, dinner, buy them a coffee. And they were challenged, those mentors were challenged to bring a new person in to that meeting that would connect them with somebody of similar interests. Maybe it's an influencer connector in our city, or somebody that maybe they want to go into finance, and so they want to learn about finance. And then we brought in a gentleman in our city, Anthony Giuliana, who's a LinkedIn expert, a networking expert, a personal branding expert. And we started these seminars with our players. So we taught them how to research for an informational interview. How to, we brought in dining etiquette to talk to them. Okay, you're going to a luncheon. Here's etiquette. Here's how you here's how you properly shake hands and look somebody in the eye and command a crowd in a networking situation. So we're educating our players of how to utilize these networks. They're now networking and they're building this. And now in a transactional world, we're still selling what we always sold, which was, how do you use this education? How do you utilize our network of this fan base, all right, to then help you get that job, all right? And then it's also transitioned into our money, our collective growth, and then also in a city like ours, where I've been here so long, all these other influencers of our guys, like, they get to eat at the best restaurants in our city because these restaurant owners love what we're doing in our community. So this is the other uniqueness that I would advise people at our level, and really all levels, but it's something you can digest and sustain, is that our players, all right, we now present to businesses in our city. We do community service, community engagement on behalf of businesses. So my car dealer, Glenbrook Dodge, all right, I presented them. And so now, hey, Glenbrook Dodge partners with Macedon Basketball to do the Page Turners program at Boys and Girls Club. And now everybody can digest that. It comes out of their marketing budget. They're engaging in community service. They're partnering with our players' value, like where they can really leverage their value in our community. It's through mentoring young people. Yes, community pride. Absolutely. Everybody's got that. Okay. But that has its financial limitations, right? And you're going to start to have that drain on individual donors. But then the businesses, how do they do community service? And this summer, our players did 300 hours at Boys and Girls Club and the Renaissance YMCA mentoring young people. And then these other supporters may have had one-off situations where our guys spoke to different youth organizations, basketball programs, did community service in different ways. And now it's amazing how we've all networked up. And we're getting ready to announce one of those charity basketball games. Yeah, against a Power Five here. It's supposed to be tomorrow. I think it's going to get delayed a little bit, waiting on our waivers. But now we're doing this thing, and it makes so much sense in our community. 400,000 people, and we're just partners with everybody doing community engagement, community service. And then our guys are getting some stipends that are now allowed in college basketball, and they live this nice life, but a life that really has them give back to our city. It's awesome how we've done it.
Truthfully, I usually avoid all the NIL talk because it doesn't apply to everyone that listens to the podcast, right? Especially the international coaches and stuff like that. But to me, what you just phrased for us and framed for us is an understanding of how to make your program the big time where it is, to steal the line from Foster Waring, I think it was his name, but that's what you've done. It's the big time. And to me, the other part of it is, it's our obligation to young people to put them in a situation where they're employable in the future. So you're saying in a way that this is actually making that much easier now, because we don't have to hide behind the lens of anything else. They can go have these meetings, they can go have these meals, and they can put themselves in front of people that are going to employ them and support them potentially.
Oh, we got 7 of our top 8 coming back this year. One's signed a professional contract, which has put us in a nice position to probably be one of the favorites in the Horizon League this year. And we won 23 games last year with a young roster. We graduated
Heck of a
4,000
year.
point scorers and are arguably our best rebounder of all time. All right. And then transition our roster. And we've retained Jon Coffman is playing for the Memphis Grizzlies. Everybody in the country was recruiting him from our roster back in the day. But we tested waters in the NBA and we talked to GMs and they said, oh, don't go be a rented player. Your style of play, like we know who he is. He's comfortable. Hey, just schedule hard. And I scheduled UCLA. I scheduled Dayton top 25 and we scheduled Ohio State all in the first 10 days. And the rest is history. He signs with the Memphis Grizzlies. And so that has paid it forward. But that retention piece, if you invest in the young people, and you build those relationships with the parents, it shrinks the margins and it makes it tougher for them to want to leave. But also if the families really believe in what you're doing for them after basketball, all right, from those life skills, we do dining etiquette, we do ballroom dancing, we do 3 golf lessons. I got 3 sets of golf clubs in our basket. The players know that we care about them more than just basketball. And so now you can manage some adversity that you're going to face in there. The other thing is I talk to my players all the time. So we got a new roster, some newcomers coming in. And as I talk to these parents, I tell the parents, I said, listen, I'm telling your son every day, okay, that when they have happy, joyful moments in our program, like they got to share it with mom and dad. They got to share it with their high school coach. They got to share it with their trainer. Because if the only time they're communicating with you is when there's adversity, and it's coming, it happens quick on that cell phone now. And that's where they got to show all these good. So now you manage this as a parent much calmer. If you heard 50 great things, if you're watching my social media and hey, we took them out into golf lessons. We did dining etiquette. We did the community mentors. They worked with the Boys and Girls Club. And then all of a sudden they call up and say, hey, coach subbed me after I just hit 2 threes. Like they digest that so much easier. You know what I mean? And so I think that's
such a brilliant point. Yeah. And so you're educating them about doing that. How do you know it's happening?
Exactly. You got to know, and I challenge the parents too. Are you asking them daily, what are the good things that are happening? And
Is
then
parent
drawn attention to the
communication?
fact that may not be hearing it. And that's
Yeah.
why I'm constantly sharing pictures with them, posts with them, positive experiences with my players' parents. And that helps get these guys to come back. And that's how you build culture these days.
So help us. Do you have a parent text group? Do you text them individually? Or how involved is that process
Individual
nowadays?
based.
Individual based,
Individual
yeah.
based. Oh, so I love this too. So this is another one. So as generations change, like it's not this generation is better than this. It's just different. You got to
Yeah.
learn how to adjust. And
Agreed.
that's a challenge. I love those challenges. So we've implemented a rule that players aren't allowed to text me. Okay. It goes back to my John Gordon comment of that void in communication. I'm constantly like, I live the lifestyle of the head coach in Fort Wayne. Okay. And one of my mantras with our staff is, hey, don't let the worst thing happen. So I'm always thinking that way. Okay, what this happened. So when a player texts me an issue, okay, that issue, like I'm my mind just starts going. Or they text you, and every coach has heard this text. Hey, can we meet tomorrow?
Oh, the
You know,
worst.
oh man, what's
The
happening?
worst. Yeah.
Oh, it's the worst. And so, dude, I don't deserve to have my day ruined. So here's my rule. You can text me information. Or you can text me if you thought I was an exceptional coach yesterday. Compliments. I'm still waiting for that one. But no, if it's an issue, call me. Okay. 2 o'clock in the morning, man, call me. And I may miss it. I do sleep on occasion. But then what happens is young men, like they all of a sudden evaluate whether it's really an issue before they just call you and push that issue to you. And now they got to resolve some things. That's healthy. But then also, I get to hear the inflection in their voice and I get to ask them a question to really digest it. So now my mind just doesn't just take off. Oh, this craziness is happening. And man, I just have a much better relationship with my players because that, and they hope that they grow up a little bit more. And that's a great lesson for just people in life. How many people like that their boss, they just text, hey, I'm sick. Okay, it makes it really easy. Okay, I'm sick, I'm out. But if they got a call and they got to say, hey, I'm sick. Now, maybe they're thinking back to, you know what? I better just tough it out and go to work. Or, hey, you know what? I can't do what I'm thinking about doing right here.
Tobin Anderson was visiting me. He's recruiting at Sarah Canyon, so I hung out with him as we watched Sarah Canyon, hung out a little bit. But we were talking about 25 years ago, 30 years ago, that we used to go work basketball camps, and that's where we originally met.
Yep.
And we were just reflecting on how hard it is to make a phone call versus how easy it is to text. And that's
Oh,
exactly what you're bringing home. It's easy to
no,
text.
no doubt. And the texting. So great. So my son's a sophomore in high school right now. And my wife, who's a college coach as well. We met at Stetson. She was assistant coach at Stetson, then went to UCF, and then went to Colgate, was at Hamilton, and then started her own NAI program here, just across the border. And so we're always sharing ideas. And it's hilarious. She's testing some of these ideas on her son. And so my son's a sophomore, and they got a fall dance. And she's Tommy, you're gonna have to ask a girl to a dance. Everybody just goes in groups. Said, no, you got to call up and you got to ask a girl. And I think it's a great experience. Like when I wanted to talk to a girl in high school, I had to call and I'd say, Mr. Johnson, can I speak with Christy? And that was tough. And they don't have to do that anymore. And it's all this texting stuff. That's something we talk about in our program all the time. If you can communicate, command a crowd, engage with people, shake hands, look at eye contact, you can dominate the world moving forward. And yes, you got to know how to do this and text and and do distance learning, all that kind of stuff. But man, you can command the crowd. And I think there's so much value in where that is. But hey, I got to steal a moment from you. You were saying at the very beginning that consistency over time.
Yeah.
And when I had lost my job and I took over this job, I had to have this reflection. Like I had a second, like opportunity in life to coach. And I worked in finance in San Francisco after college. And I was one of those guys that made a really silly decision where I was almost making six digits, and then I take a four-digit job at a small Division III in Southwest Virginia, working for Bob Johnson. Now, it just so happens that his dad was chief of staff of the Army during Vietnam, had a picture of his dad on the cover of Time magazine. I got a PhD in leadership. He networked me with all these guys. 5 coaches out of his that worked for him ended up becoming Division I head coaches. So I was blessed, just lucky with that. And I get this great start. As I made that jump and I go through coaching, I'm now out of a job, but I love what I'm doing. I hadn't worked in 16 years or 14 years. All right. Because I just loved what I was doing. And I was now reflecting back to be almost 40 as a mid-major assistant coach. My wife had to quit her coaching job, which she loved. And I was reflecting back, like, why do I do this? And it was like, I love young people. Like, I love building generational leaders, helping young men reach their dreams, and just working with players in the game of basketball. And so, as an assistant coach, and it wasn't sexy, it was IPFW, right? Like, it wasn't sexy, but like, I get to coach, Division I coach. And I had this mantra in my mind of, hey, I'm going to make this a job I want to be in the rest of my life. And not many people are thinking that when they're becoming an assistant coach at IPFW, but I had that mindset because I'd spent the last 2 months without a job. That mindset ends up having this passion. We recruit a number of these guys from Florida. It ends up being, I think, 4 all-league guys from Florida. We end up growing to where we win 25 games, make it a championship game. Tony gets another job, and I'm lucky enough to get promoted to our job. And I carried that mantra into my job as the head coach at IPFW, and make that job the one you'll be in the rest of your life. And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be there, but if you take that mindset, when I walk, I park 200 yards from the front door. And I do that on purpose. I don't pay for the parking pass right there. I get to walk in every day as if I'm on a visit, okay, to campus, and I get to look at. And so many people make their first decision in the first 10, 15 seconds. You walk onto a campus, and I see, what am I seeing? And I pick up trash. I'm paying it forward. Maybe somebody else sees it. Say, hey, that head basketball coach picking up trash. I'm not looking for a pat on my back, but I honestly want to look nice going in. But I look at that perspective. Don't get institutionalized. What does it look like from that standpoint? And then I pay that forward. And that's where I fundraise, to where I never want a dollar to stand in the way of us doing the right thing. Like it's Ben Franklin, penny smart, dollar stupid. That happens so much on college campuses. And it's not just it's everyone. And you make these decisions because, hey, we all have limited budgets. But how do you fundraise so that you're not doing those and you get to adjust and fix things? Well, then I get active in the community. And then we create a fundraising event. And I'm spending all this time, and that's where I get people to join into what we're doing. And that's helped with our transition with NIL. And it's made me enjoy my job. One of the greatest assets we have is the Fort Wayne community. They've made our program great. Like, we have good basketball players, but we have good basketball players because people have invested from our community.
Absolutely. And obviously, you've made it great because you've stayed, you've had success, and clearly your players are having great experiences in terms of that. So, all of that helps shape your sustainability, right? You don't have to get specific here. I asked Campy privately, I've asked some of the coaches privately. I know you'll talk about this a little bit. You mentioned earlier about not having necessarily opportunities, because unless you have that one shining moment, like Tobin had, that one shining moment where it's like you win a game in the NCAA tournament. In a lot of ways, it's really hard to move up the coaching ladder from where you are, no matter how successful you are. I look at programs like yours, Toledo, Oakland, just the ones that I knew from my time at Windsor, and all of you are outstanding coaches that could win at a higher level. Talk to us about that process. I'm not saying you wanted to leave or you
Yeah.
want to leave, but
No,
that's
that's
just
great.
part of the process.
No, that's great. And I think some of that is my appreciation for my spot in the opportunity. I'm one of 362. I
Yeah.
look on my phone right here, and I've had that. You can see one of 353. So it's been a little while. It's been on there. Control it. You can control and then coach the team. And that goes to appreciate an opportunity to be a Division I head coach every day. So appreciating that. And yes, I think people talk about, hey, that next job. And I have had opportunities. I have had conversations. I think from my mind, and let me just talk about my appreciation. My appreciation for this situation is that I have a 18-year-old now and a 12-year-old now. And I was the son of a civil engineer who was not a college athlete. And I was blessed to go to this great athletic high school in Atlanta, Marist School. I played with an NBA player, Matt Harpering, two NFL guys, and nine guys that go on to play college basketball. My baseball team was ranked in USA Today. And then I played from our football team, didn't lose a single regular season game in the playoffs. We were ranked in Sports Illustrated and all this stuff. And I always envisioned myself taking over when my high school coach retired because that's who I admired. That's who I wanted to be. I never thought I'd be a Division I head coach. I just wanted to impact young lives. I thought I'd be a high school coach, and so I've appreciated where I am. But then my kids, they didn't sign up to be a Division I head coach's kid, and so the fact that they've been able to go now to go to the same middle school and now projected to go to the same high school, and when I've had opportunities, I've just have asked my chancellor and my athletic director, can I add years onto my contract? And that's allowed. And that's why I think we miss a little bit. Everybody's worried about that next job. And if you can get years onto your contract, so now when you face adversity, there's a calmness about you. You get to still coach basketball. You get to manage the adversity of NIL. Like, how's it going to manage your campus? You lose some kids to transfer, whatever that might be. If you have years on there, you don't feel maybe the pressure to feed your family on this side of it with this thing. Because there's a lot of guys in my job, like, you get done, you get one chance of being a head coach, and then you're done. And you're going back chasing as an assistant coach. And so I appreciate that. And so I haven't just been obsessed with chasing the next one, but it is hard. And it's also hard where if you're worried about the next job, you're probably not doing your job very well. And that's also where the challenge is how do you promote yourself in those situations if you don't have that Tobin year? And Tobin, ironically, was the head coach at Hamilton College when my wife was the head softball coach at that college. And he would sometimes babysit Tommy when he was 2 years old. She'd drop him off in his office so that she'd go coach her softball team. So
Oh,
it's
man.
crazy to see all this stuff. We're some of the first people to actually, he responded to my wife on congratulations after some of those big wins before he responded to me. But it's cool watching people get those. But there's a lot of good coaches out there, a
A lot
lot
of
of
good
good
coaches.
coaches.
A lot of good coaches.
And so maybe some of those opportunities happen, but also, man, I love the opportunity I'm in and I love the city I'm in. And I've had great players and I get to impact lives where I'm
Well, you
at.
think about it, not just the consistency for your family, but you also think about the relationships that you've built in that community and how hard you've worked to do it. And that's like starting all over at a different place is a challenge. It's not that easy
Yeah.
in that sense.
No, and it's not. And a lot of times there's a reason that there's an opening there. There are some challenges.
Look, Pat put a lot of work into some of these questions that I got to ask you, coach. You gave me
Yeah.
all the numbers and stuff. So let's get a few of those things
Yeah.
because at least we think it's just relationships and charisma and all the stuff that you are. You've done an exceptional job just with the basketball part of the program as well. Consistently ranked top 10 in the NCAA in effective field goal percentage, basically from 2015 to now. But talk to me about your paint touch motion offense, which I know is a cool way of phrasing it. So give us an idea of that.
And let me, I think some tenure stats are really healthy to talk about what we're doing. And that's been really impactful in our recruiting now, is because it's generation after generation that have done this. Not just when we had Contrars in the NBA or Jared Godfrey, who's our all-time leading scorer, number 16 in scoring over the last decade, number 3 in three-point field goals made over the last decade. I think we're number 4, and then number 13 in three-point field goal percentage. So it's not just about volume, it's efficiency. And then the effective field goal percentage that you mentioned, it's not just about threes. It's about how you can be efficient. And when I was at Stetson as an assistant coach, we got access to Doc Rivers and the Orlando Magic, and you were just trying to figure out how to learn about basketball and from the highest level. And they were talking back 20 years ago about paint touches. And it was before really we got obsessed in the college level. And they were talking about the inefficiency of mid-range and so forth. And so I also had the scout of Belmont with Rick Byrd through those years. And I was stealing stuff. I've been a thief my entire career, stealing ideas. And one thing that impacted us when I took over the program was, first off, when we were at Stetson, we had this stat of if we'd hold a team under, I can't remember what the number, 62 points, we won 82% of our games. And then you go play Belmont, who averaged 82 points a game. You're like, how do we do this? Like, you got almost zero chance to do all this stuff. And I always want to be in a position to where if you can score the basketball, you got a chance. Like, you got to outscore the opponent. And I also came in like IPFW. I didn't know what that was back when I was growing up in Georgia and coaching in Florida. Like, I didn't know. And so how do I create a non-sexy coach and maybe a non-sexy brand, make some sex appeal to it to get good players? And so it's a lot easier to recruit. You're scoring the basketball and we got 6 or 7 guys maybe, or 5 or 6 guys are averaging double figures. So it's not about you get yours, it's everybody gets theirs. And so you got to get players. And we created that. And then you're like, how do you score the basketball if maybe you're not getting that big man that's just going to be able to draw all this attention? Now, you played against one of our best ever, Big Steve. It didn't affect us. That 24-second clock really affected him when you were at Windsor. You 2-2-1 back, and we couldn't even get him the ball. We couldn't reverse it to him. But
that was the plan, coach.
yeah, he beat us, and we were projected to win our league that year. But so what we did is we figured out, like, how do you find shooters? Let's create space. So that's what the game of basketball, it's about creating space. And there's 2 primary ways that I think are that are the easiest way to create space. Is 1, play fast, get them in transition. That first 7 seconds is the most efficient time to score the basketball in whatever level you're in. Kick the ball ahead, don't dribble it, kick it ahead. And then second, be able to shoot the basketball. And so having 4 guys on the perimeter that can always shoot it, I never have to do a chess match and how do I hide this guy? And so as I have my staff come through and there'll be a coach, I got this player, I think he's going to be really good for us. And I'm like, okay, how's he shoot it? And they start to fumble a little bit there. I said, he's going to be a good player for somebody else. And it's a great starting point if you're coaching up your staff on how to recruit, if you establish benchmarks. So now they get to shrink what you want that's going to fit with how you play. And so that shrinks, and that's a starting point. Got to be able to shoot the ball. If you're going to play on the perimeter, got to be able to shoot it. And so that's where we get space there. And then as you work into our paint touch, all right, the second way that we feel like you can get really efficient, because it's not about volume with us, it's about efficiency. It's about touching the paint. And so what we did is when I was an assistant coach here with Tony, we took all this video and broke down an entire year, and we looked at paint touches versus non-paint touches. And it's the same stat that we've kept for the last 14 years. We've shot over 62% when we touch the paint before we shoot it, and less than 37%, this is a 14-year stat, when we don't touch the paint before we shoot it. And now we take out of there a jailbreak, like a steal, jailbreak, like that doesn't count. We take away, if we call flare action for a good shooter in a set, we take that out. We take out a kick ahead 3 for a really good shooter in our transition game. So it's that sort of half court flow type offense on that we play out of. And then another exception is we call attack the tag. So if we do a ball screen and we roll and we hit the shake man or the back action, and he's got to close out 10-toed, it's something we practice. that 3 there, we count that as a paint touch because that's something that attacked the tag in our ball screen. So that's what we consider a paint touch. Okay. And then if you coach through process, it's a lot easier than coaching through shot selection. Okay. So if you're a high school coach or a college coach, if you start saying good shot, bad shot, okay, you're going to have the kids are going to look at you cross-eyed. They're going to wrinkle their brows. And I promise you, the parents, all right, in the 4th row, they're going to be looking at you cross-eyed. Good shot, bad shot. And hey, coach, oh, coach, I work on, I can make that shot. And I tell them now that I got all these years of stats, and I challenge coaches, stat your prior years this way. And you're like, yeah, I know you can make it, but you can make that at a 37% clip. Like, I want to shoot 62%. And then we've now had 24 guys sign pro contracts in the 14 years I've been here. And I'm like, hey, that's what Frank Gaines. All right. He's making a ton of money as a leading scorer in Italy. And that's him. He was at 37. He gets to that next level. Jon Coffman got to the NBA because he was freakish with his stats, with his efficiency. Okay. That's when you draw attention. Nobody likes a volume guy. Everybody wants an efficient guy, and then you stack volume on top of that. With what we're doing, that paint touches. And I love it in practice, particularly early on. You get in the summers and you're letting guys make aggressive mistakes. And that's a term we use all the time, aggressive mistakes. Like, I'm not yelling at them process or paint touch shot the day they step on campus. I let my older guys coach them through some of that stuff because they love the culture we've created. Pass up good shot for great shot, get to the paint, create, kick it out, and get 10-toed threes. Don't play over the top. Those are inefficient. Get angles. So we love free throws. We love dunks. We love layups. And we love threes. And we'll allow some mid-range because there's times, late shot clock. Or we've had guys, Pipkins, Mo Evans, some of these guys that are elite. Jalen Jackson for us right now, that low floater, like he can play over the top, and they're super efficient. We let them grow into that space. But that's where when I stop practice and I say, hey, do you like to score? And of course, the guys are like, yeah, I like to score. All right. Do you want to play at the next level? Yeah, coach, let's be efficient. And guess what? That's a 37% shot. I want a 62% shot. And it helps our guys digest. And you're not saying good shot, bad shot. You're talking about process. And then that helps me coach the game. Like, the game is fast. And sometimes you get caught up on a referee, or you get distracted, or you're looking at play action as you go through it. So if you want to simplify coaching, you look at a couple stats that in our war sheet that I get at each media timeout, those 4-minute games, that war is I'm going to get our paint touch shot efficiency and rate. Okay. I'm going to get a possession type stat. So the other team's offensive rebounds, and then our turnovers. So possessions are obviously key. Like, you're giving it to them on those. So we're going to talk about those. But then I get to coach through our paint touch shot. So let's just say we're down 12-4 coming into a timeout. Okay. And my assistants give me the paint touch shot. And we've 7 of our last 8 shots are paint touches. I'll walk in with a lot of poise in that timeout, and I'll say, hey guys, process is great. Like, trust process. Hey, Bobby Planutis, you 42% 3-point shooter. Like, you just got 4 great looks. We touched the paint with it. Numbers are going to play out. You'll see me sitting there. Numbers are going to play out. I call it Vegas style shooting. Hey, Bobby, man, I watch him shoot 80% every day in our shooting drills. That turns into 40% in the game. Well, he's 0 for 4. I'm going to take him to Vegas. If you're a blackjack game, I'm doubling down, and the numbers are going to play out. And that gives me poise in those timeouts to talk about process. Or on the other side of it, all right, let's say we're up 12-4, and 3 of our last 7 shots we're 3 of 7 in our paint touch shot rate. I'm saying, hey guys, we're settling. Okay. We're settling for threes. I know it's paying dividends right now. We made some shots, but we got to attack. We're not attacking the paint. We're not getting into the paint enough. And then let's just say we're down. I get to poise them, get them poised. Hey, process is going to work out. Numbers play out. If we're up and our process is not good, I get to address that. We got to get paint touches. And then the third way that you get space. So we talk about playing fast. We talk about shooting the basketball. And then it's about creating space. So this is a Davidson terminology. It's about create space, attack space. That's our motion. Create space. And so in our motion, it's ball movement, player movement, spacing. And we're not a big screening team. Now, do we screen in our sets and we run sets on dead balls? Yes. As we play off of made baskets, we're not. It's quarterback by our point guard with quicks that have a ball screen or a flip ball screen or something that they in space that they manage, but we're playing our motion off of that. And so that's where we're looking to create double gaps. And it's a little bit more kind of dribble drive and ball movement. So we're trying to get as many long closeouts as you can to get into the paint to create drive. What good players can't drive a closeout? Most good players can do that. And so as we recruit, we also address guys, you've got to be able to shoot it and to be able to attack a closeout. So there's very few guys in our program other than maybe our fourth guard. All right. We never call him a four-man. Our fourth guard is going to be the guy who maybe is a little bit of a stretch four type personality, but we never are going to have two guys that catch it on an edge and can't drive that closeout. So one of my greatest moments as a college coach, you'll appreciate this. I'm going to give a shout out to Richie McKay. We play them, and this is after we beat Indiana the second time. So we beat them when they're ranked number 3 in the country at home, and then we turn around the next year. I'm anticipating us getting beat by 75. My most embarrassing moment in college basketball, right? They're going to know it coming. We beat them by 20, 92-72. Hit 17 threes that night. Guys played at great flow. Then we go down right after that trip, going down to Louisiana. And of course, I'm worried about our teams thinking there's something they're not or not maintaining that flow. And we're playing Liberty, which is a crazy bad schedule, right? In a tournament down there because they're really good defensively. And we continue that flow. We scored 45 on them in the first half. And we end up we're blessed enough to finish the game, survive the game and win the game against Richie. And he literally meets us outside of my locker room after the game. And it was one of my greatest moments as a coach. I've told Rich this a number of times. He's like, Jon, talk to me about what you do offensively, how you expose us and did this against us. And it's all about we get flat. Like we pass, cut away, or create stuff. We're attacking from the edges and those double gaps. And that's what pack line teams do is they want to jump and swipe and jump into the gap. And so if you pass and stand, you're a dead man walking because the ball gets frozen. And so it's all about that player
When
movement.
you're saying cut away, are you saying, because again, traditionally a lot of people think about cuts to the rim, but cuts to the rim are slow sometimes and they don't create double gaps that fast. So do you mean cut away at an angle or do you mean cut to the rim?
So we have different cuts. We actually do mean cutting to the rim.
Okay,
which
when you
can
say
be a
cut
slow
away.
cut, which can be a slow cut, but that's an aggressive cut in way of they have to guard you. And so they can't jump into the gap and then just lock in on the ball because we end up calling that a selfish cut. So by cutting deep, okay, and now we call it our rip back. We catch it on edge. We love to you get one-on-one, either rip baseline and go, or rip back. You're going to sell the baseline drive, and you're going to rip it back. All right, a bad basketball player like me, I was able to get to the middle, get to the paint because I was really good with my ball fakes. Okay, and so rip back and you get to the paint. If you can freeze that guy in the gap whose man is cutting the rim and cutting away, he's going to soon release. And then your man who's cutting, he's going to be open in that opposite side. We love middle drive because no teams have solutions for that. Even pack line teams, if you're getting flat and cutting away, there's no solution because you get stuck 2 men on the ball. That's all of our goals, right? Get 2 men on the ball and then find the open man. And so the selfish cut is if you cut hard and cut deep, you're going to selfishly position yourself for middle drive kick, shoot a 3. And that's where we've been really successful off of that.
Obviously, you guys love offense. I can tell the passion in your voice. You love offense, not discounting any parts of the other parts of the game, but shooting, as you mentioned, is such a huge part of this. So what are some skill acquisitions, some different things that you're doing, whether it's drills, etc., to be able to help players shoot the ball?
I think it's how you practice your shots. And it's that you commit to shooting. Glenn Wilkes, the legendary coach at Stetson, who the court's named after, would just hang around with us in DeLand, Florida. And he'd come to practices and stuff. And we took a trip to Italy that he hosted us on. And I remember multiple times asking him, if you could go back in time, what would you do more of? And he says, I'd shoot more. And you can create all these sets and it can be phenomenal, but you don't make the shot at the end of it, like it doesn't look very good. And you can solve a lot of problems. There's a lot of times guys have made shots and they make me look like a great coach because they make that shot. And so shooting the basketball. So we're going to shoot at the beginning of practice. So we lift 4 days a week and we shrink it as you get into the season, but we always start in the weight room. And then we're going to shoot a minimum of 20 minutes every day. Okay. Guys are taped up. We have combine shooting. So they're getting taped in between the weight room. All right. And when we're shooting, so we got guys, they're in there, they're doing their shooting drills. Okay. As we progress, sometimes 20, sometimes 30 minutes. We're going to shoot every single day.
That's pre-practice or pre-weights or?
No, so lift.
Okay, lift first.
Loose. And then we shoot in that pre-practice.
Gotcha.
There'll be managers, there'll be assistants, and then guys are getting taped. So they're running back and forth from the goals as they're getting taped, moving into practice, and they're getting up those shots. And we call them our combine shooting drills. So there's drills that look like how they're going to get shots. And there's 7 or 8 of them that we have that are movements leading to shots. We try to maximize shooter versus rebounder. So it's at a minimum 1-to-1. Maybe it's a manager and a coach. We got 3 full courts in our practice facility, which is awesome. But they're getting game shots, and we know the number they have to make to be shooting 80%. Just like the NBA, we try and take that percentage and cut it in half. We want to be a 50-40 team. Actually, in 2020, we were a 50-40 team, only team in the country that did that. Shoot 50% from the floor, 40% from 3. And you got to be able to shoot those numbers in your combine drills. And so that's where I gain my confidence in our guys. So then also in our skill work looks like our offense. So we're doing cuts, named cuts, and then we're finishing with 3 shots. So 3 guys in a drill, and you're making a wing clip cut, and then you're driving for an ID flip. He's driving downhill. We got a search behind, all of our terminology, and then we get 3 shots, and you're filling out. Okay. And it doesn't matter what that terminology is, but we're our offensive movements. We're teaching our read and react motion offense in these cuts, and then we're getting shots out of it. And we're doing that every single day. So they're learning how to read and react off of their movements, and they're getting those shots. The other thing that I think is undervalued is that, like, when you shoot a free throw, you never shoot facing the sideline doing your routine and then turn and shoot the ball, right? You don't do that. How many shooters, they pace themselves inside foot to then shoot it? When if they would do early work and they'd sprint to the spot and then slide to finish off, they'd be 10-toed in their 3, and that early work would make that 3-point shot easier. And so we drill that, and we obsess.
And basically you're saying that in the modern game, especially with your style of play that you played for a long time, you don't have to turn to shoot very often. If you're doing it right, you should always be stepping into the shot or already prepped for the shot.
You should. And that's a little bit more stylistic with us.
Yeah.
If you were coming off,
but I think it's true of most good teams nowadays. Like, it's more efficient than turning.
And if you actually stat the 3s you're making, very few of them are after a down screen or a stagger. Most of them are what we call fill outs. You run to the rim or you're around the rim, whether you just screen something or you're filling out to the perimeter. So you're running out to the perimeter. And then how often does a guy get a catch because he's not squared up? He's jogging to the perimeter. So we work on fill outs. Like, you start underneath the rim. How quickly can you sprint to the perimeter, get to 10-toed, and be squared up to that? That's maybe the most important offensive move you can make as a perimeter player, is how do you sprint to get yourself 10-toed, so now it's a squared 3-point shot. And it's really simple. And we ignore it so much because we're trying to do all this stuff that, like, and I love trainers, okay? But so much of that is these drills that are like, man, like, that's a tough move that you're probably never going to use in a game. All right. Or this shot that, okay, Reggie Miller did that.
Yeah, they're selling sexy. They're not selling efficiency.
Exactly. And what I'm selling is it's sexy to be efficient. So, and hey, it's sexy to get paid. And the guys who get paid, they're shooting 58% from the floor, 42% from 3. Just ask Jon Coffman, who we were his only Division I offer.
That's beautiful. Ball screen. We got to talk a little bit about ball screen offense. You're number 2 in the country, right? Points per game, ball screen efficiency.
And that was in a year. We've been really good at it. I can't remember what year that was, but we have been good in ball screen efficiency, and we get multiple ones. Some of that's recruiting. We, like this last year, we were the 3rd smallest team in the country. It scared me a bit because we make people size down. Just ask Juwan Morgan. He was guarding Jon Conchar 2 years in a row when we beat Indiana, and we're putting the ball in Jon's hands. He's guarding the 4-man. We're trapping him in the post, but then we're putting those guys in ball screens. So the more guys you can play in ball screens, the better. I think playing multiple point guards, combo guards can be really effective, and it freaks other coaches out. I don't know about you as a coach, but when you would see like that 5-man shooter go out there, wouldn't you get freaked out? How do we match up with them? And they start going, they hit a 3 and you're like, oh, what are we doing? Call a timeout and you
Yeah, it was
sub
our only chance too. Like some of these lower levels, it's your only chance to compete against bigger teams anyway. So
Yeah.
totally.
And you can freak people out that way and they size down to match up because it's hard to guard. Some of that is stylistically and matchups and how we play. But in terms of how we coach it, something that I do, which as you get into, we guard ball screens. We play a little differently off of how you're going to guard the ball screens, but we have game plans. We have offensive scouts as we go into what we're going to do. That's going to play in our flow. And great example. So teams that we love, teams that are going to hard hedge, because now we're going to sell and slip on that ball screen. And the way we do is we fire deep. Okay. And a lot of people, and when I was early on as a head coach, I would fire to the mid post so that I could then dominate that space on the throwback to be able to duck them in, to be able to catch the ball. The way the game, I don't care what the referees say, hey, freedom of movement, they're going to let them physically shove you out. It's a physical game. So you really don't gain any value from that. Okay. So we changed our game. We flip our heads. We no longer reverse pivot because now if you run into the guy, referees love to, my father-in-law is a college, right? He loves to send it the other way, give his flex, right? And so you get a lot of those. We get a ton of, if teams go under, we fire to the rim, they hit our roller, and we go to the free throw line. So we flip our head versus reverse pivoting now because you can't reverse pivot into the guy anymore. It's a foul, freedom of movement. But then we roll deep. And if you roll deep underneath the rim and you're not pausing, it's as hard as you can fire. All right. What happens is if you throw a back action, it's a longer closeout for the guy than if you're going mid post. And to me and how we play, it's about how do we get an edge to get the long closeout, or now ball screens. How do you either skip side of 2 or hit the back action and attack the tag and get the long closeout, right? We're going to find out, we're going to quarterback where you tag. So we go into the game knowing where you tag from, and our guards, they're going to attack the tag with the scouting report. Okay. And then that attack the tag, it's how we utilize that with our fire to the rim. With that, I don't know if you have had people ever talk on your podcast about firing deep off of that for a longer closeout?
Not really in depth, but we might have to have you back on to go into this. We'll do a full video breakdown of it because it's fascinating
I
stuff.
love what I do there.
Just as you're talking about these different details too, the power of your ball screen is obviously the power of the gravity that your players are creating around the ball screen too. Right? Yep. It's much harder to take away space on a ball screen if you've got players that can shoot with efficiency.
No doubt. Because as soon as you have a player that can't shoot, they're just sticking that guy in the middle of the paint. And that's what helps us. Now, the other unique ball screen, because I like talking about uniqueness of this. The other unique ball screen that we've added, and we call it a below ball screen. Okay. Below the free throw line inside the arc. Okay. And we'll get that when we, punch it towards the baseline. Maybe we're driving baseline, they cut us off. And then we turn it into a Charles Barkley, and then we come over and ball screen off of that. Or maybe it's we push a man through in transition and we punch that gap and we get that. We love that ball screen. So if you're going to go under ball screens, we love it. We're going to tell our guys in the timeout, let's get to below ball screens. Because now if you're going under a ball screen and we're inside the arc below the free throw line, we're just going to take up that space. And now you're going to the paint. And now somebody's going to get locked in a ball and you're going to kick 3 or you're going to shoot the basketball, right? Over the top, and then you take up that space. The other really uniqueness that we have on that below ball screen, let's say you switch. So it's a 9-1-1 switch, or you're switching. We get to that below ball screen, right? That switch, that isolation. We'll then drive the switch on that below, get to the middle. We reverse pivot. We call it a lurk duck. Our big rolls and reverse pivots. And it doesn't have to be a back to the basket big. He's reverse pivoting. He's got an angle. We reverse pivot, big step, throw it in with that angle, and now you catch score on that. I don't know if you can visualize that.
I can visualize it, but maybe we'll get Pat to send us some video of it to share with your podcast too. But it really paints a picture of coming again. the details that go along with the simplicity, right? And that's it. Ball screen of itself is pretty simple action, but the details of it make it so much more powerful. And just those little nuances of making the ball screen go lower. It's a really simple concept, but in a way it's hard because in a way also it contradicts a little bit what you're talking about, because in a way you're taking away space from yourself, but you're
Oh,
doing
yeah,
it for an intended reason, right?
yep, you're right. And that's because guys are trying to figure out how to guard you as you play through it and sort of that uniqueness. And so sometimes they just try to gap you and make you shoot the dribble threes. And so how do you, if they're going to do that and they're going to try and go under, and that's Summit League experience, man. Those guys are good. They're pack line defense. I learned all that stuff playing in the Summit League for all those years. They're going to gap you. They're going to try and make you take dribble threes, give you space, and you don't get the inside out threes. And so we figured out ways to get that, to dominate that space.
Share some of your power words with us. I've got to ask you about some of them.
Oh, power words. God, I used to have a list of all that stuff as I go through.
Coaches love words, coach.
Let me just talk about, so this is great. So if you have a high school coach that
Yeah.
watches, I think this is great value. So we all have power words. And I'll use one like ID flip. Nobody knows what ID flip. I made it up. Okay. Now in our program, that's where we drive to the paint. Okay. And rather than getting to a kickstand, okay, in the paint, we recognize, oh, okay, I don't want to shoot over crowds. I've drawn this crowd and now I'm probing. And so I now ID a guy, because what happens to people play us, they try to just spray to shooters and they make maybe one of our small guards dribble around with nothing to do. Okay. Not they know, hey, that coach doesn't like to mid-range. He doesn't like to play over the top. So now we're in the paint probing. We're going to drive right at your back. If you've sprayed to a shooter, we call that an ID flip. We're going to ID you. And now that man is coming downhill and we get quarterback style. We come to a jump stop. We let him take it. It's not a flip where you run into the guy. And then he gets downhill off of that ID flip. And then guess what happens? Two guys go with them and we call it a search behind. We then run behind him. We throw back and we get a ton of threes this way. So there's a bunch of those power words and identify. You just heard ID flip, you just heard kickstand, you just heard search behind, and maybe some NBA people. And I have assistants, or I may steal some stuff from the NBA, but a lot of it's just my terminology that I've come up with. You create your own words. If you're a transfer in or a freshman trying to get playing time for us, you better learn our glossary really quick. So 5 years ago, I thought about this, man, I'm not having transfers and freshmen starting for me, playing impact minutes. How do I fix this? And so I started creating a video glossary. And so it's a power word with video attached to it. And so now, as soon as they commit to us, we send it to them. It's a private YouTube link and they get to learn all this stuff and they get to watch it over and over again. So now, if they don't know about it, that's on them, right? Hey, you're not playing. Well, you don't understand what we're talking about here. And I think the value of power words is that a lot of times coaches, you become Charlie Brown's teacher. It's long because it's coach talk and you're trying to coach a phrase in a single word to coach on the fly. So you're not stopping constantly. You get flow. And so how do you have power words you can bark at guys and they understand what you're talking about? And that glossary has been really good. And so for high school coaches, I think it's really powerful because how many community coaches do you have? Or my son plays in the Catholic school system. He's got CYO coaches, and you're trying to get those kids to grow up with the same system and terminology and stuff. If you have that on video and they're coaching and using the same language, it really helps your organization. I think that's critical. So I love that you brought up power words. We might be here for 2 hours if you heard all my weird words I throw in.
We've almost been here for 2 hours already, coach. And it's long overdue to have you on the podcast. Just incredible success there. And obviously now coaches can tell why too. Purdue University Fort Wayne is lucky to have you. And we covered just about everything you could cover from a program perspective. But I just want to, again, remind coaches, the part that you shared at the beginning is absolute gold because it extends beyond just being a basketball coach and it comes into like, how can you help develop better relationships? Something as simple as giving out your cell phone. And I've done this at clinics. I give out my cell phone. And you're absolutely right. Even if there's 200 people there, generally most don't text me. They don't. And it's just a reality of it. But when you added that kind of text tree and then some incentive to it, I was like, okay, dang, I'm doing that now. I'm going to add that incentive. I don't have the same jersey, but I can do something. and then get them to text me, because those relationships are ultimately what this business is all about. No matter what anyone else says, it always comes back to that, doesn't it? Network.
No, absolutely. And learning and respecting the industry.
Network
And
and knowledge, right? Network and knowledge.
so I think if I had to put a phrase beyond make this a job you want to be in the rest of your life, that has helped us have this sustained success in a challenging job. People talk all the time. What we've done is awesome. I've had great people, from players to assistant coaches to my athletic director to our community, but be intentional. I still remember Art Goldsmith, my professor, my money and banking professor at Washington and Lee. He was really impactful on my life. And he talked about yellow pad. Hey, be intentional, work it out. He'd be like, hey, if you don't understand something, put it on paper, work it out. And so I've really tried to be intentional and come up with solutions to the problems. And so it doesn't help you to complain, all right, and to bitch about different things. Like, there's got to be a solution. Okay. And so if you're intentional, you're going to be able to find ways around to do that. And it just helps you being positive. People want to be around positive people. And then you do that by, if you have this network, if you can develop a network of people you can bounce ideas off of, I think it's awesome. And it's something that I honestly, I miss a little bit. And this is probably what brings you joy in your job, because you've gotten connected with a lot of people and you've built this great brand. People want to be on your podcast. So you're big time now. It's awesome. You
Yeah.
are. You
Well,
may not
thank
think
you.
like you are.
Yeah.
Like, you'd be amazed how many people listen to your stuff. It's huge on
Yeah.
the impact you have. Coaches don't share as much as we used to.
Mm.
We get so busy with our stuff. And there's this, whether it's the recruiting has become so cutthroat, the scheduling has become so cutthroat, we've grown our staff so much, whatever it might be, we don't share like we used to. And I really wish people would pick up the phone and talk more on that. And that's really helped me. That network I had from when I was at Emory and Henry College, that first network of Mike Young at Wofford, who then went to Virginia Tech. He got his first coach job, played at Emory and Henry. You have Jimmy Allen, who then went to Army. He's now back at Emory and Henry. You have Nathan Davis, who's at Bucknell now, New Hampshire. You have Jamie and Christian, who's now a professional coach overseas.
Doing great in Italy. Yeah.
All got their start at Emory and Henry College. And my head coach at that time, like, taught me he was going to kick me out 2 years. You got 2 years to figure out how to network and build these relationships. I'm kicking out the door. You got to go find another job, another place. And that networking and those core guys, like, they've helped me through hard times. We share ideas. And if you can find a network like that, it can really help you grow in the industry.
It's such a great point. And I can remember, again, and I'm sure you can too, after games when the opposing team was staying over, that we would get together for a drink as coaches
Yep.
and colleagues and just talk. And it just doesn't happen the same. And I get it. Like, the busyness and the demands on your time are obviously significant, but I do miss that part of it. And I am blessed that this does give me an opportunity to reconnect or connect with people like yourself in ways that are really, I feel, profound and helpful. So to me, it's a blessing. And I've always admired you. I've always been impressed with what you've done. And again, long overdue. I had Campy on this summer and I had you on, and two people that really, again, I studied quite a bit at my time in Windsor. So I thank you so much, Coach, with you taking time and sharing the game with us.
Hey, Campy's the best, by the way. I'm sure you've heard that before. He is, and I've weirded him out a few times because I told him I admire him. I want to be him in 40 years. I like to be able to be coaching, and it's cool what he's done at the same place. I also admire him, man. I hope I can keep that hair like him, right? Like, he's
Well,
done a
you got it,
phenomenal.
Coach. You still got it. You look great.
I'm
So
working. I'm working
yeah,
that.
well, you're amazing. Thank you for sharing
Hey,
with us.
thanks for having me on.